Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Radiator Arms, best viewed in Netscape Navigator. All right, a joke for the tech bros, and we've lost him already. Okay, my name is James of JayEmm on Cars, and I am joined today by Ant of Sports and Touring, and also JayEmm and Friends, and Will.
Of Will the Plank.
Yes, our mixer, maestro, co-host, an all-round good guy. Now, in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the cars of media. So the music videos, movies, and video games that featured vehicles that have inspired and continue to inspire us. But before that, a couple of points of order. First off, we want to say a massive thank you to everybody that tuned in for our first episode. We are incredibly grateful to both of you. It's been absolutely sensational, and we hope this thing will run and run and run. I also want to start introducing a few regular features just to break things up, and I'm going to start this episode with one I'm calling, on account of a lack of imagination and a little bit of man love for Brendan Fraser, Blast from the Past. Now, I've been acquiring over the last few years a stack of old car magazines because, you see, I have found out something over the last 9 years that I've been doing YouTube, and that's that not everything is on the internet, contrary to popular belief. And one of the things that's actually hardest to find might seem simple, but it's how much did a car cost when it was new? And so I've been buying old auto car magazines because in every one of them you have the new car prices section. And I've used it to help compare what a car's competitors may have been when it was new. Because 10, 20 years later, of course, things are different. But we're not going to look at that section in today's episode. Instead, I thought I'd share with you a couple of little gems that I found from this episode of Auto Car and Motor, or issue rather, dated 12th of October, 1988. Yours for 95 pence. Or in the Republic of Ireland, £1.39. Now, this is the 1988 Birmingham Motor Show preview. And a couple of things they were quite excited about is the new shape Aston Martin V8, now with 32-valve engine. And for those watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this, a preview of the Jaguar XK 220, which is sure to steal the show with its 6-litre 48-valve V12 and four-wheel drive, making it the fastest British car ever made. But you know what I really, really liked is the fact that there is an advertisement in here for the Vauxhall Cavalier. And it takes up, gentlemen, count them with me, no fewer than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages.
I bet every single sales rep after they saw that up and down the country were drooling.
Oh, yes, I am sure they flew off the forecourts. I mean, it's just fantastic. The way they used to advertise things 30 years ago was so different. I mean, there are about 4 different advertisements in here for different oil brands. There's a bit on the BMW Z1, and here you have the Peugeot 405. And one of my favourites, there is an advertisement here for a four-wheel drive Ferrari, apparently, is about to happen. It didn't for about another 2 and a bit decades. There's a bit here saying that in France, they are a little bit upset that the first batch of British-built Nissan Bluebirds have been classified as Japanese cars. Yes, and France is only going to allow 3% of cars sold there to be Japanese. But the car doesn't have enough actually British in it to qualify it as British, despite the fact that we were building it. Frank Sittner has become the touring car champion. And I love this. See, if a £21,000 airplane leaves the ground at 116 mile an hour, why doesn't the £2,470 Honda Aerodeck? This is fantastic. And just to finish, he is selling the Fiesta Olympus Sport, none other than the world's fastest man, Linford Christie.
Ooh. Classic.
I mean, I think there's certain people in the world, aren't there, that, you know, for our generation, to me, fastest man in the world, always going to be Linford Christie. Strongest man in the world, always going to be Magnus Magnusson. Like it's got to be. But anyway, I thought that was a little bit entertaining, and I'd share that with you guys. You can bring in something to entertain me next week, and I'm going to try and stop hitting the microphone stand. Sorry for those listening on headphones. So, for those that didn't listen, in the first instalment, we talked about our very first cars. And for Ant, it was...
Toyota Corolla, 1977 Toyota Corolla liftback.
Yes. And for Will...
It was 3, really. It was the Rover 418. It was my Volkswagen Transporter. And when I finally got my licence, it was my Peugeot 106.
And I had a Peugeot 407 diesel estate, which we'll not talk about anymore. And that later got exported because somebody liked it enough, they wanted it to leave Britain. So, yeah.
Or they hated it enough that they wanted it to leave Britain.
I was about to say, making sure nobody ever got the unfortunate to see it again.
Yeah. Last seen in a field in France with all of the serial numbers carefully filed off so that it can't be returned home. Poor thing. I quite like that car. I actually spent a night sleeping in that car. In my own driveway. We were doing a film and some people came over to stay and they were making an awful racket and staying up late, but I was always a bit of an old soul, so I just decided to get a night skip. And one of the great things about the Peugeot was that the seats fold completely flat in the back, so you could just kip down for the night.
How did you find that sleep? Was it a good night?
It was actually, yeah.
Yeah.
It was fine. It was nice. The temperature, it was that right temperature where you can sleep in a car and it's not uncomfortable, you know. So anyway, I think I've already talked a little bit too much. Sorry, it's a hazard of the job. Let's talk about the movie and video game cars that have inspired us. And you already know what I'm going to say because I take it at every opportunity. So we're going to save that for a little bit.
I think we'll save that one. Well, I've got others.
Oh, we'll get those. We'll get those out of you as well, yeah.
Right, video games. I remember the first time I got a PlayStation 1. This was in the late 90s, actually. I got it a little bit later as a kid.
PlayStation 1 or PS1?
No, PlayStation 1, the original, the grey one.
Yep.
And I got the original Need for Speed with it. So you had, I think the Diablo, the NSX, the Viper as well. I was obsessed with the Viper.
Was there a McLaren F1 in there as well?
I think there might have been, you know.
Because I had, on the PC, Need for Speed Special Edition.
Ooh.
Actually, to give it its proper title, Road and Track presents Need for Speed Special
exactly
Edition.
What it was.
And they had some really cool little videos that they'd shot where each car you chose it. And I remember the Diablo like spinning around and some oil drums catching fire. It was very, very 1990s.
Yes.
It was amazing.
The Dodge Viper was just the coolest car. And this is the original one. I think, was it the RT10? Was that the original one?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was just... There's something about it. I suppose it was a very phallic-looking car as well, but there's just something about it which screamed, "It's manly. This is a manly car."
Yeah,
it was the V10 engine. I think it was the sound it made, and I remember seeing. I can't remember what it was doing in the video, but just seeing that, I was like, I need one of those. And that was a dream car for me for years, until I got a bit of older and realised it'd probably be absolutely horrible to own in this country.
Yep.
You'd probably burn your legs on the exhaust and you'd therefore need several skin grafts.
Yep.
It would be horrible in petrol. It would be literally like an old truck, apparently, from the way it drives, because it is a truck engine, I think, the V10.
Was. Yeah,
but it was something about the 3-spoke wheels in it as well, which was great. I don't know if you guys played Grand Theft Auto 3 as well.
Oh, of course.
Back in the day. And they had, what one was it? The Banshee. That was based on the Viper, because I got Grand Theft Auto 3 for my 11th birthday. I shouldn't have had that game.
I don't think I had it about the same time as well. Yeah.
I don't think anybody should have had that game, but I just loved. There was this little garage at the bottom of the map on the first island, and you could break into there, and every time there'd be a Banshee, usually a blue one, I found, and you'd just ride around, and I thought, this is the coolest thing ever. This is my evolution from Need for Speed to Grand Theft Auto 3. I've got to have one day. I've got to have one. So yeah, that was just always an obsession for me. And then the next one was, I don't know if you ever played this, was the Need for Speed Porsche Challenge when that came out.
Yeah. Did we call it Porsche Unleashed here?
I think it might have been. It was either
Porsche 2000 or something.
Porsche 2000. Yeah. So they had different names for it in different territories.
It was a very expensive advertisement for the Boxster.
It was, wasn't it? But I remember that game being just phenomenally fun. Like I played it in one of my own channel videos I did not too long ago. I got out my old Dell laptop from about 2006 and I loaded this game up and I was playing, I think it was the 3.5, is it the 356B, the really early one, or 356A?
Yeah.
That one I remember always thinking, I've got to have one of those one day. That, I don't know, it was just the starter car in the game, but it was my first kind of introduction to classic cars, was looking at that game and thinking, I didn't know a car that old could look that good. And just driving it around slowly. I think it was the Côte d'Azur, something like that. Is that in France?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, south of.
And then just driving around and bashing into all the other cars because I didn't really know how to race very well then. But
did you ever play this game?
No.
It was, as you might imagine, a Need for Speed game, but just all Porsches. And I found out later that it's that game, which is why it took so long for Porsche cars to appear in other games. Because if you remember, in the early Gran Turismo games, there was a complete... To be fair, in the very first Gran Turismo games, there's a general absence of most stuff that wasn't Japanese. But as the series progressed and got bigger, it was always a little bit odd that there were no Porsches in it. And there were, though, a couple of roofs. And they were basically the substitute because obviously Roof was considered a manufacturer in its own right, so they could license their cars. Somebody then told me it was apparently Porsche didn't really know what they were doing in the early days. And so when they did that game, the Porsche Unleashed with EA, they signed a very, very punitive and sort of draconian contract that effectively gave EA the rights to use Porsche cars in their games exclusively.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so that's why it took so long. And I think that might also be why when later for Forza there was a Porsche pack, it was a paid add-on.
Yeah, I was going to say, because is that which Forza? Forza?
3 or 4, I think.
What do you call it? I always get that. Is it Forza or is it Forza?
It's whatever you want it to be. It's 2025, man.
Well, I think that's a good way to go with it. But I remember because I played Forza on the original Xbox as well, and I don't know if you did at the same time. Yeah, I don't remember. I don't think was that downloadable content then, the Porsches and that, or was that not till like 2 or 3?
I think it's a little bit later. I think it's a little bit later on. In memory serves, it's all a little bit hazy, to be honest. See, because the thing is, I was a diehard Gran Turismo fan. I got the analog controller because that's sort of one of the things for like, Gran Turismo, sort of didn't debut it, but you would get a lot better in Gran Turismo if you had the analog sticks. And so I had the first Gran Turismo, I had the second Gran Turismo, didn't they do Prologue ahead of Gran Turismo 3 as well?
Yep.
Yes.
And then obviously I had Gran Turismo. Was it Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec or something they called it?
I don't remember.
And I'm pretty sure
PlayStation 2.
That was then PlayStation 2, I'm sure. I thought that was the first GT for PlayStation 2. And then I had Gran Turismo 4, but I think at that point the excitement had started to fade. And then when Forza came out, I didn't really look back. I tried Gran Turismo 7 recently, and I must say it bored me to tears.
Did it?
Yeah. For those who haven't played it, it's painfully Japanese. The amount of loading and menu screens and things you have to go through, and it's got this weird idea of a coffee shop, but not in the kind of fun Amsterdam sense. It's just a sort of, shop of coffee that doesn't even give you actual coffee. It just recommends race ideas to you that you kind of have to do. The racing, the physics, the game, the driving bit is really good. Like really, really good. But it feels like the tiniest morsel every now and again, and it's just painful.
This was the issue for me with Gran Turismo. It's like once you're in the driving part of it, it's great. It was all the menus around it, and it kind of put me off. I kind of started with on consoles. On the first Xbox with Project Gotham Racing. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes. I love that game.
And I thought that was great. But one of the best things about it was just no nonsense. You'd open the game and you could either go down the career path or time attack or whatever. And it was just straightforward, simple. There were no gimmicks. And I felt like Gran Turismo always had a lot of gimmicks. At the time, though, I think the cars in Gran Turismo were slightly better or of more interest to me because they were kind of the Japanese sports car type stuff that was really quite popular. But I just thought the user interface on it was terrible.
I maintain without Gran Turismo and certainly without Fast and the Furious, a R34 Skyline GTR would be 15 grand, 20 grand.
Yeah.
Just for sure. And I think Gran Turismo made a couple of other mistakes. First off was that it claimed it had, 300 cars. And it's like, no, 20 different paint jobs for the RX-7 is not 20 different cars.
And also 20 different variants of the MX-5 is not 300 cars.
Yeah. And also, I think maybe when they went either to Gran Turismo 4 or perhaps 5, when they went to, I think, maybe the PS3, that they then had HD models. Yes. Because some of the cars were just from the PS2 era.
Yes, I remember that because the PS3 version is the first proper Gran Turismo I actually played, and I do remember that being a bit of a jarring difference. I think for the ones that are PS2 models, you either had no in-car camera or all the windows were blacked out and you couldn't see the car, something like that.
And the thing is, the ones that they did the full HD upgrade on were fantastic. They looked amazing. Although I was always a little bit curious about the fact that they claim to have spent, and they surely did, a lot of time recording the sounds of cars, and yet whenever you played it, no matter what you were in, from a little three-cylinder econo box to a racing car, it did sound like a Hoover.
Yes.
Yeah, they all sounded atrocious.
The best bit about Gran Turismo sound-wise was the menu music.
Oh, yeah, I can still hear it now.
Yeah.
But Gran Turismo was awesome. Gran Turismo, I think, was one of the first early attempts at being a bit more serious. It billed itself as the real driving simulator, didn't it? And you got to give it credit. It did revolutionize that segment. But let's be honest here. When it comes to racing games, for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's actually the more fun games that really kickstarted it. I'm just going to throw something out here. Sega Rally.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, classic. If you want to play Sega Rally, arcade, there is a place in Hackney Wick called the Four Quarters. It's like a bar pizza place that you go to, stacked full of arcade machines. And if you saw the JayEmm and Friends video where I take James's GT4 out, and there's a little bit of me playing on it, it's there. Four Quarters in Hackney Wick in London, and but it's ridiculously priced.
I will admit that I am a little bit prejudiced against Hackney Wick. Because that is where my beautiful Metropole Blue Peugeot 407 SW 1.6 HDI HN05 YGT was broken into by some ne'er-do-well that relieved me of my TomTom. But I think the joke is on him, because look how useless TomTom is now.
I used to sell those to people.
Yeah.
I used to work at Halfords for a while, and I remember I quit there halfway through a shift, actually, in 2014. And it was about the time that kind of Google Maps and things like that was starting to come kind of onto the iPhones and things like that. And kind of TomTom stuff was fading a bit into obscurity. And I was still upselling all these £300-400 sat-navs thinking, I've got...
I do think sometimes that, the rise and fall of the TomTom and its many other derivatives, Garmin and so on, other sat-navs are available. It's almost as extreme as the rise and fall of the Hawk Tour girl, because, you went from a period, if you look at it, there's a period of less than a decade in which we go from like, what's sat-nav? Is that all right? And then, a few cars had it, but it was text-based and a bit rubbish and weird, and you had to have an awful lot of faith into it when you couldn't even see where it was trying to take you, to then a few years later, everybody has a sat-nav. Make sure you clean your windscreen when you take it off, because otherwise some scrote in Hackney Wick will break into your car. And then a few years later, we've got phones now. We've got smartphones. Like, who on earth has a TomTom anymore? And of course, there was always the hilarious bit of, if you had the misfortune of living in a new build housing estate, the delivery drivers would all be using TomToms that hadn't been updated for 5 years, and your house just didn't exist as far as they were concerned.
That happened to me.
Yeah.
Happened to my sister, actually, or my sister-in-law, not too long ago. They bought a new house in 2022, I think it was, and it took several months for any of the delivery drivers, even then still with Google Maps and things like that, had any idea where they were. And that obviously gets updated a lot more frequently than TomTom Maps, which is like, what was it, every half year, every quarter, something like that. It did take a while, I think.
Fairly frequently. And of course, the novelty voices.
Oh, yes.
We had John Cleese on ours.
I swear we had a Stephen Fry voice for our sat nav.
Stephen Fry's very soothing.
He is.
Yeah, Stephen Fry can tell me whatever he wants. Like, that's fine. I would listen to Stephen Fry if he told me that I went the wrong way.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's one thing. I think also, Mario Kart. I mean, it's in what, 8 or 9 now? Like
9 coming out with the new Nintendo Switch later, if you ever looks things.
I could never get with Mario Kart. I don't know why. It just wasn't for me at all.
Really?
Yeah, just didn't enjoy it. Didn't enjoy it at all.
Do you know what? I might have to treat myself. So we'll talk about this in more depth in another episode. But between Will and myself, I'm getting really back into the retro console thing. And I still have my original Nintendo 64. And it has sort of dawned on me recently. I don't know why it took so long, but there's a whole bunch of things. I know we all have it. And of course, we'd love your feedback. Please email us. The link is in the description below, however you're watching or listening to this. And I realised there's a load of things I really desperately wanted when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, but I just never had, because my parents wouldn't buy it, or my friend had one and I borrow it from them, and all that. And then it dawned on me that I was an adult and I could buy whatever I want. So I treated myself to a copy of Lilac Wars recently. But the racing game I actually quite liked, because if you remember, Mario Kart came out and then there was this whole batch of Mario Kart clones, including Crash Team Racing.
Yes, love that.
Which is quite a big one. But the one I remember that everybody else has forgotten is Diddy Kong Racing, which was the sort of Donkey Kong equivalent to Mario Kart, which is a bit odd because it's, Nintendo as
first
well.
Party as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so, but yeah, I like Diddy Kong Racing. Just,
When did that come out?
oh, that's definitely 90s. The mid to late 90s, maybe?
Yeah.
I swear I also vaguely remember a SpongeBob kart racing game that I think my niece and nephew used to play.
That sounds like a fever dream.
I don't know. I might have to check that, but I remember it being kind of fun.
And I tell you the game that defined the PlayStation in a lot of eras for me, Wipeout.
I never played
Wipeout was good, yeah.
Wipeout was
I really
amazing.
enjoyed that.
Because Wipeout was one of those games that, it's actually graphically kind of simple, but it was fast and 3D. And of course, those two things combined were quite rare up to that point.
Yeah.
I've got this flood of memories coming back. There was a great game called Roll Cage, where basically the premise was it's like a futuristic racing game. And the idea was the cars were so fast, you could then drive them upside down. So whenever there's a tunnel, you could drive upside down and it had weapons and stuff like that. There was Revolt, which was like a remote control car racing game. Yeah, I love this.
I'll tell you what, another one that I shouldn't have been playing, but I used to love, Carmageddon.
Oh, Carmageddon, the car. It didn't get banned, did it? But for the second one, they had to replace all the pedestrians with zombies.
Yes.
Oh, right. Did it get like...
It was basically a
PG
car racing
something?
game. Did you ever watch The Death Race? Or Death
Yeah.
Race 2000?
Yeah.
It was basically like a video game version of that.
Yeah.
And you drove through a town racing, and the main character was a chap called Max Damage, I recall.
Yeah, I
And
think so.
I remember most fondly, there was a power-up that you could get, which was ultimately like a gigantic mace, so a massive spiked ball on a chain behind the car, and if you could drift it round a corner, you would basically vaporize some poor bystander, and then on the screen it would go, "Stitch that." I played that when I was about 8 or 9. I thought it was, and to be fair, it's one of those games where you were talking about GTA 3 earlier, and I was remembering my mum like giving me a game, being like, "Oh, now your father and I have had to talk a lot about whether you can have this or not." And it wasn't GTA 3; it was GTA, the first
original
one.
yeah.
Wow.
And now you look back at it and you go, "Sorry, how was that controversial?" Because you're like, yes, you can go around and shoot people or run them over, but you're like, they're pretty. I mean, it's basically about as violent as Plants vs Zombies, really. It's not particularly graphic or extreme by modern
it
standards.
wasn't, was it?
It's a tiny bit more terrifying than Pac-Man or Galaga. Get the references in for my older audience there. But yeah, so that's a bit of video games.
But before we move on from that, actually, there's a game I want to mention.
Go on.
This is possibly before your time. I was literally just talking to my brother just before we started recording this. I couldn't remember the full name of the game, but it was Lotus Turbo Challenge
Yes.
on the Amiga.
Yeah.
He and I would stay up all night long playing that game. It was terrible. Like when you look back at it now, it was just like this very sort of like, you know, the way that the cars moved left and right. There was no physics to it. No. It was just terrible. Basically.
Did you ever play Mega Race or Mega Race 2?
No.
Mega Race 2 was great because what it was quite clever actually. The tracks were pre-rendered CG. So the only thing that the computer was actually rendering is the cars itself. Yeah. And so basically, as you slowed down, it just slowed down the movie. And then as you accelerated, it just sped up again. But another couple of games I remembered from the Mega Drive era were Virtua Racer.
Oh, yes.
First, like, 3D racing game on the Mega Drive, which was like... I mean, nobody thought the Mega Drive could do that sort of thing. And to be fair, it did. Just
my favourite Mega Drive game, Road Rash. Road Rash 3 specifically.
Love Road Rash.
That was great. I had great fun, like beating people off bikes with chains and whips and baseball bats and things. And this like really heavy metal 16-bit, wasn't it? The Mega Drive, 16-bit kind of FM synthesis sound chip going there. And, it awoke something in young me. Like, ooh,
that. And do you recall Ayrton Senna Grand Prix?
I do vaguely recall that. I don't know if I really. I don't know if I played. My brother's probably
licensed product from when he was still alive. Like we had Ayrton Senna Grand Prix 2, and I always wondered what happened to Grand Prix 1. I never saw a copy of Grand Prix 1, but we had Ayrton Senna Grand Prix 2.
Was that on the Saturn or was that on the Mega Drive? Or the Genesis for audiences from other areas.
Yeah, I never played a Saturn until I bought mine the other month.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so now I've got both Sega Rally 1 on the Saturn and Sega Rally 2 on the Dreamcast.
Sega Touring Cars.
Sega Touring Cars? I don't remember that.
There was a Sega Touring Cars, yeah.
I remember Toka Touring Cars.
Toka Touring Cars, that's it. That was it. But it was on the Sega. For sure. I think it was made by Sega.
I remember.
Toka Touring Cars, I had a Mercedes on the front, the 190.
Toka Touring Cars was so difficult.
Yeah. It was
because it tried to be quite realistic. And actually, to give Sega Rally some credit, it was one of the first racing games where they actually paid attention to what happens when you change surfaces and things. So although today we look back at it and it's a very arcadey game, they actually was one of the first games where they went and recorded engine sound. And one of the first games where they went out in rally cars and probably, to be honest, just on the company account, just went and had a lot of fun. But they paid some attention to, well, what does happen when you drive a car through a puddle? You know, stuff like that. Oh, Ridge Racer. Because Ridge Racer, again, was very much deliberately arcadey. And I remember you could basically get a car to do a 1,080-degree spin if you sort of got it right. Later turned into Rage Racer. Not great. Ridge Racer Revolution I had on the PlayStation.
I think you need an arcade cabinet with old racing games of some sort.
Don't.
No, I think you should.
No,
I'm going to influence you onto this. You need it. And I tell you
if I put one in here, we are not going to get to episode 3.
Oh, no, we're going to put it in your house, square and centre in the living room as a pride of place.
One day I will buy myself like a Time Crisis arcade cabinet.
Love that.
Also, one of the things, so I bought an old CRT TV, and one of the things I like about it is I've got some light guns, and I've got Virtua Cop and stuff like that.
House of the Dead?
I haven't, but I'm going to buy it.
We're going to play that together.
Because I had House of the Dead 2 for the Dreamcast, and just love that so much.
I'm going to look out for arcade machines for them, and you're going to buy them. And I'm going to live.
There's still money.
I'm going to live vicariously through you, James.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. I'm down with that. Okay, so that's a bit about video games, and I know a lot of people don't actually care about video games full stop, but I personally think they're missing out an awful lot.
Yes.
What about TV shows?
Oh, TV is an interesting one. Do you remember, I never really watched it, but Hardcastle and McCormick?
Yep.
Yeah.
What was the car?
Weird, I think it was like a kit car or something like that in it, because it looks really crazy and futuristic.
Like an
yeah.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was actually... It was a car of the time. I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah, obviously Knight Rider.
Oh yeah,
classic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Automan.
Nope.
Okay. This is showing my age now. So back in the early days, I think early 80s, around the time that Tron came out, not long after that, there was a TV show called Automan, which is about this, holographic, somehow could interact with the world around him, computer program that somebody creates that's a crime fighting computer program, and he could have anything he wanted. This cursor would just draw it in holographically in real life, and then he could use it, but it would somehow have physical form. And his car was a Lamborghini Countach.
Ooh.
And when people talk about when they sort of do the Tron wraps on their Aventadors, that was the original Tron wrap on a Countach, and it was black, and then it had like all the lines in blue, all around the car. Now it came out I think it was not long after Tron, but I think it's one of those things. It might almost be coincidence that they had a similar look to them. But yeah, Automan, check it out. It was a terrible TV show, but it had a Lamborghini Countach in it. And because at the time, just like in the first Tron movie, at the time, we didn't have curves on our computers. Everything was these 90-degree bends. So what would happen is he'd drive the car, he'd have a passenger with him, he'd get to the end of the road, and instead of just going like round the corner, he'd go like that, just complete 90-degree turn without slowing down, and the person in the passenger seat would just get slammed against the passenger window. It was hilarious.
I was about to say their kidneys have shifted from one side of their body to another.
Basically. But it was a Lamborghini Countach, and that was one of the first times I think that was the first time I ever seen a Countach when that first came out.
Dukes of Hazzard. The General Lee.
General Lee.
That is an icon.
It is.
That's one of those icons that's crossed the pond, because the General Lee would be recognised here.
Anyway.
Same as Kit. The Knight Rider reboot was not good, which was a shame.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I just I wanted it to be better than it was.
Oh yeah, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it's like some of the later Terminator. Was it the later Terminator films, like 4 or something like that? They weren't particularly great, but I still enjoyed it because it was the Terminator.
I do have the ability when I want. I mean, obviously, former film student, filmmaker, and some people in that world find it very difficult to just take their brain out and just put it on the side and enjoy a film. Like, no, I will. And there are films out there. Good example being, say, like Tron Legacy. Tron Legacy to me is a sound and light show. Like, you put Tron Legacy on. Remind me next time you come over. I'll put it on the hi-fi because it sounds banging.
I've never seen a Tron film. I've got to be honest with you. I know I'm terrible. There's a lot of me. I was in some ways sheltered and also not sheltered as a child. So now you have to educate me.
You don't have to watch the first one to enjoy the second one, but I haven't watched the first one in so long. I kind of feel like I need to.
I'm scared to watch it.
Well, the thing with Tron is I feel for it because in some ways it's a little bit like the Star Wars prequels, because it was doing lots and lots of stuff that was very, very new at the time, and it was very easy to mock it, and it did get a lot of things wrong, but often not the things that people think. So, for example, did you know each of the Star Wars prequel films had more models in it than the entirety of the original trilogy?
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Lots and lots of people think that a huge amount of the prequel films is CG. In fact, even large parts of the pod race are model work.
Is that Phantom Menace you're on about?
That's Phantom Menace, yeah. Including some of the crashes are model work, which is why they look quite good. The problem is, particularly for episode 2 and 3, episode 1 was still shot on 35mm, but the problem they had with episode 2 and 3 is George Lucas was desperate to shoot on high definition digital cameras, which was very revolutionary for a big production at the time. TV was kind of starting to do it, but film wasn't. And unfortunately, it just wasn't quite up to the task. And what actually needed improving was the compositing technology. So the special effects actually were quite good, but the compositing, putting all the different layers together, wasn't, and that's why it looks so janky and fake. Right. It's just one of these unfortunate things. If he did those films now, they would just look infinitely better because the technology's just come on a long way. Cameras have come on a long way. Compositing technology's come on a huge way. There's shots that we could do. If we had access to the original materials, we could make those shots better just using stuff that everybody could run on their computer at home. But 25 years ago, or before that, cutting edge stuff.
Yeah, people are doing that though. I mean, there's lots of grey label, I don't know what you want to call it, kind of remakes where
bootlegs.
People are bootlegs, where people are actually redoing these films shot by shot. There's a despecialization
of the original
series
trilogy.
of the original trilogy, because you can't get. I think I've got the original trilogy pre special edition, but I would not want to put it in a video player just in case it got chewed up. But there were no master copies apparently of the original, so people have actually been working through the special editions and shot by shot reversing it back to the original.
Fun fact: the last time the original trilogy got a proper release was Laserdisc.
Wow.
That's the last source. And if you have, like I do, the DVDs that they did, because if you remember, it took a long time for them to release the Blu-ray of Star Wars. If you have the DVDs, they did put on them the original trilogy, but it's the 4x3 letterboxed scan that they did for Laserdisc.
Wow.
So, yeah, basically, for the despecialized, they've had to go through a lot of different sources.
Do you have a Laserdisc player?
No.
I don't know if many of them even still work. I think
Most of them don't.
the discs have all rotted. They got like disc rot and things.
Yeah,
They're starting to
I
split
own
apart.
a laser disc. I have a copy of Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, which I bought for $1 in Los Angeles at this amazing place called Amoeba Music, which you would just love. You just get lost in it. Honestly, it's fantastic. So Star Wars has got some pretty iconic vehicles in it, actually.
Yeah, true.
You've got the Land Speeder, you've got the X-Wings, TIE Fighters. Like, a lot of this stuff has entered like the popular conscious. Even people that haven't seen Star Wars would probably be able to identify an X-Wing fighter, stuff like that. And you know something as well, like we'll talk about movies in a moment, but talking about TV stuff, Thunderbirds.
Oh, yes.
Right? I mean, and Derek Meddings, who did a lot of the model work on that and then later did sort of James Bond and stuff like that, his genius, because, he didn't invent doing stuff with models, but the genius that they had was they dirtied stuff down.
Yeah.
So they made it look used.
Yeah.
Although I've got to say, like, I do love the Thunderbirds' obsession with everything being nuclear powered.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
But I love how they were like so conflicted about it, because you'd have all these things that are like, yeah, this is great. This plane can stay in the air because it's nuclear powered. Only we have to put these radiation shields down so we can't see out the damn thing. And if we are in the air for more than 10 hours, everybody on here is going to die of radiation sickness. So like, I don't know what sort of like cheap cut rate reactors they were putting in everything. Then there's one
Not enough
episode.
lead.
There's one episode where they have this massive machine. I think it's like a logging machine or something. And it's this gigantic thing, like the size of like a really big house. But then it's pulling a thing that's the size of it, which is just the reactor for it. And you're like, guys, can you not just get some diesel at some point in time?
Have you seen the guy on YouTube that makes like kitchen appliances powered by like diesel and things, and puts straps engines to them? It was like a V8 blender or something like that.
That's Jeremy Clarkson, isn't
No,
it?
he did. I swear he did something like, maybe somebody was copying. But there's you go on the internet and there's lots of random things, and I was just made me think of that, like what was it, a diesel generator powered kind of strimmer for or whisk for your coffee or something like that. All sorts of random things.
Speaking of the internet, I went on the internet.
Oh, God.
And I found this.
Let's have a look.
Nothing.
Oh my God, the size of that lock screen.
I have seen some of what he was showing the audience on some of those skits.
Oh, I dread to think.
You don't want to think. Don't think about it.
So if anyone doesn't know, back in the day on Top Gear, they used to do this little piece, and Clarkson used to say he went on the internet and found something and showed some very inappropriate, definitely not safe for work or for the BBC content, and but it always used to be blurred out. That was what that was from. But you know what? Something that we didn't talk about when we were talking about TV shows, and I have to talk about this because I think this probably had one of the most significant influences on my choice in colours of cars, and that was Miami Vice.
Yeah.
And I mean, the car content on that show was brilliant. Obviously, we all know that the Daytona was actually a kit car based on an MX-5 in the first episode, and Ferrari got very upset.
Was it MX-5 underneath, was it? Are you sure? Oh, no, Miami Days predates the MX-5. Miami Vice is like
Pontiac
1984.
Fiera or something.
No, it was Pontiac Fiero, something like that. That was it. There we go. It was definitely some sort of small two-seater sports car at the time, but it was a kit car.
Yeah, it wasn't a real Ferrari.
No, it wasn't a real Ferrari. And then Ferrari got very upset. I think they sent them one, actually.
They did.
For the season 2.
Yeah.
And then they went to the Testarossa, and it was the Testarossa that I fell in love with, the white Testarossa. And at the time, I had a poster of a Lamborghini Countach Koenig Special,
Yeah.
which was like for me a precursor to the anniversary edition where they went completely wild with all the vents and everything, and that was in white. And then there was the Miami Vice Testarossa that was in white, and for some strange and bizarre reason I have an obsession with having white cars now, and I think it was those two things that started it.
Yeah.
But Miami Vice, the car chases were amazing, and they would last for ages. And there was like one episode, my son actually reminded me about it the other day because he recently rewatched the whole series. And there was a guy who was at a racetrack and there was some racing going on in the background. And they actually showed a whole load of the racing. There was about 4 or 5 minutes of just solid racing and nothing more.
Well, I think it's in actually the first episode, they have the famous sequence where they basically play half of In the Air Tonight as they're just driving through the night, just with shots of the Daytona.
Yeah.
I'll be honest
Brilliant.
with you. I haven't actually watched Miami Vice other than a few clips on. I need to do it. It looks like Ant is staring at me like he wants to throttle me, and it's understandable.
I'm going to let you
pretty
off.
good.
I was going to say this is going to be your homework.
It is, because I remember that because I love all things 80s. I love 80s music. I love a lot of the 80s cars. Hence why, for some strange reason, I own an Austin Maestro. But there we go. That's a story for another time. But I love 80s.
Very, very swift you got past that. Very, very well done. I don't think they noticed.
I don't. Yes, exactly. So it is one of those things. It is on the list of stuff to watch.
I tell you what, though, I'll take your Miami Vice and I will raise you. 18. There you go. Right. I mean, that van, I have known a few people that have actually driven one. It's the most awful, terrible. Like in the last episode, Will and I mostly bonded over a shared love of vans.
Vans.
But that
More vans.
Is it GMC, I think, isn't it?
Yes, it was.
I think it was.
And I've seen a couple of replicas here, and it apparently, because it's got a V8 in it, but in typical 1980s American fashion, it's utterly and completely gutless.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just drinks fuel, goes nowhere.
8 litres with about 85 horsepower, probably.
Yeah. Drinks like a NASCAR, like goes like a shopping trolley.
Yeah.
You know, it's just. I tell you what, though, talking about stuff that's I've blasted in the past, just go back a little bit to video games. A game that I actually own a copy of, because I bought a bunch of stuff recently, is The Getaway.
Oh,
Which was
what a
game that came out that I think a lot of people derided as just a bit of a GTA knockoff, but actually it's really not. And what's fascinating about The Getaway is I think it's from about 2000, give or take, but it was a really early game, along with, got to give it a mention, Metropolis Street Racer on the Dreamcast. But The Getaway, they scanned and photographed London, including things like the advertisements and so on in there. And I read an article recently where somebody was saying it's actually one of the most complete resources that we have for studying what, like 2000 era London was like.
Wow.
Because, yes, of course, we've got lots of shots of media and stuff, but it's basically a complete recreation of London from 25 years ago. And the problem is, because it also includes lots of period advertisements and things, they can never remake it, because to get the licensing and permissions and everything at the time was so, problematic and detailed. To try and get permission for advertisements 25 years later, some of the products and companies might not even exist anymore, so you just can't do it. And it's fascinating.
What I loved about that game, in many ways, actually, that game was very frustrating to play. I don't know if you remember. And
I do.
And I never really actually got through much of the story missions, but it was all about the cars. Mm-hmm. It was just all about how faithfully they were created. They had loads of alphas. They even had a Rover 75.
You imagine an American being like, what is this? They're just going to view it like a sort of like a GTA car, aren't they?
Exactly.
It's like a Rover 75 to an American is like a Banshee to a Brit.
Exactly.
You're like, that's not a real thing. Surely that's not a real thing.
No, it was great. The car section. They even had Vauxhall Vectras, I think, and things like that as well. But that was Britain in like the late 90s, early 2000s in a video game.
Yeah. I love it so much. Okay, any more honourable mentions from the world of TV?
Yes, Starsky and Hutch.
Oh, I was thinking of that.
Full Gran Torino, wasn't it?
Yeah. No,
Did they call it the tomato or something? Was that what?
I don't remember.
It was something like that because it was red with the white stripe, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
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 It's very 70s music.
Yeah.
Interstate 76, another good video game. Don't know if you ever played that.
I
back in the
did.
day.
I did, yeah.
And that made me think of that as well.
You're making me feel very old because I know for a fact that you all watch those on reruns and I watch the original series.
Yes.
Oh, God, I saw an episode of Sequest the other day. Did you ever watch that? No. Somebody once upon a time, I think Steven Spielberg, had a great idea to make a TV series set on a submarine.
Yes.
Called Sequest DSV.
Yeah.
And it was really bizarre. It was really good, but also predictably really expensive.
Yeah.
I've also been rewatching Baywatch recently. I'm a season in, and I've yet to pay attention to a car.
It had cars in it?
Yeah, apparently.
Much like the Deep Space Nine Klingons.
Yeah. Fun fact for you, a bit of a tangent here. Pamela Anderson doesn't turn up until season 3 of Baywatch.
I did not know that.
Yeah. For the first 2 seasons, the sort of star of it is Erika Eleniak, who was in Under Siege. That was kind of like her big Hollywood moment.
Under Siege was a great film.
Under Siege was a great film.
Oh, but since we're off topic of car stuff, but let's keep it geeky. Airwolf.
Oh yeah, no, come on, with these vehicles, like that's definitely allowed.
And Blue Thunder.
Yeah.
With Roy Schneider.
Yep.
Yeah, straight out of the sea, being chased by sharks and boats, straight into a helicopter.
Yeah.
If you don't know Airwolf, you have to add that to your list.
And another iconic theme tune.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I've heard that. I feel like my brothers, because I've got 3 older brothers. I'm sure one of them have probably like done something Airwolf related or watched it, listened to it.
Airwolf is fantastic. Also, like, hang on a minute, like we're being far too grounded here. Wacky Races.
Oh yeah, the cartoon.
Yeah.
Wacky Races is brilliant. Like,
I'll get you, Penelope Pitstop.
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah, it's just
with
very
Muttley.
Fantastic. Yeah. Actually, I need a bit more of a cold, and I'm getting it. My nan could do a sort of good Muttley every now and again.
Didn't Penelope Pitstop have a ridiculously large pink car?
Yeah.
And wasn't there like Thunderbirds with Lady Penelope?
Yeah.
And wasn't there a car manufacturer recently that took inspiration from both of them?
No, it didn't happen.
Didn't Ford make a Thunderbirds car in the early 2000s? Like a big 6-wheeler?
Yeah,
thing?
for the movie.
Yeah, the
Thunderbirds movie, because Rolls-Royce wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Did James May drive that on Top Gear or something? Get that?
He might have done.
I feel like it was something.
I know of a car company that for a little while had a Toyota Previa done up to look like Thunderbird 2. And I really desperately wanted to drive it, only I was a little bit concerned that it might go horribly wrong. And I spoke to a couple of people that did drive it, and they did describe it as, I quote, a death trap.
I'm going to say this cryptically in a way. Is there a possibility of, didn't you say there might be somebody with a Grand Tour car?
Yes.
You might be able to drive. Is that happening?
Maybe.
Watch this space. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it.
Yeah. So this will make you laugh. There was a period where my father and for a little bit I did some jaunts across Europe with a few of his friends, inspired by Top Gear's cheap car challenges. The first one we did was a motorcycle ride from Bury St Edmunds, where I was living at the time, up to what was almost the Isle of Skye in Scotland. And we did it on cheap motorbikes. And for the motorbike fans out there, I did it on a Kawasaki GPZ 305, which drank oil like a 2-stroke and was voted the most terrible of them all by a bunch of German motorcycle tourists we met, led by a very large bearded man whose name was Michael Schumacher. He's really big, like archetypal German, mustache, beer belly. And I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "You'll laugh," and handed me his business card, and it said Michael Schumacher.
Did it in brackets have somewhere no affiliation?
It's something like, I think he was there first, so but his friends decided that they wanted in on that, but they didn't have motorbike licenses. So after that, it was like, okay, let's do the journey again, but in cars. Only the thing is, this is like 15 odd years ago. it was really easy, actually a bit more than that, it was really easy to buy a cheap car for 500 quid that would have got you to Scotland without really much in the way of drama. So we decided that the best vehicle that actually provided a bit of the risk and struggle that the small motorbikes did was the Reliant Robin.
Oh, God.
Now, the first year we did it, I had a Reliant Robin that was blue with flames up the side. It looked a bit like Vivian's Ford Anglia from The Young Ones.
Wasn't a Wayne's World recreation, was it?
No. Instead of fog lights, it had an air horn that played a Mexican theme.
Fantastic.
And we fitted it with a system whereby we could basically had a line that ran, I think, straight into the carb that came into the cabin that was normally bunged up with a Golf tee that you could use to basically feed the engine whatever you wanted. And brake fluid burns in a lovely big white cloud. So effectively, whenever we wanted to, we could turn this car into a red arrow. So there was that.
Smoke trails.
Somebody else had the predictable Trotters Independent Trading recreation. Somebody had a Batmobile. And a few other different things. Somebody did an Addams Family tribute car. The year after, we went to France. We drove them to Paris. It turns out to drive to Paris was less miles than actually to go to Scotland. And for that year, a few more people joined us. Somebody had a turbo Capri-engined one that didn't last very long. A couple of guys that worked for the AA did one up as an AA recovery van.
Fantastic.
And so the car started getting a bit more outlandish and a bit crazier. That year, I was in the car with Dad, and he'd done it up as the Jaguar from Austin Powers.
Oh, I love that.
And dressed up as Austin Powers. And I think we nearly got in fairly serious trouble because the first stop we had was in London. We wanted a photo of them all outside Buckingham Palace. And this is sort of like 2006, 2007 or so. And it was, not quite so difficult to do these things then. And we parked up outside, and luckily one of the guys there had a friend who worked security at the palace, and he knew about what we were doing because we were there, and he got a phone call saying, "Are you and your mate parked outside Buckingham Palace and a bunch of old crap cars?" And he went, "Yeah, why?" And he's like, "Right, okay, I just needed to know." It turns out we were extraordinarily lucky because if you remember, at that point in time, Fathers for Justice were quite active and have been scaling different buildings and causing a bit of a nuisance. So this bunch of blokes dressed as Batman, Austin Powers and all sorts, turn up at Buckingham Palace. Apparently, until the guy phoned, the armed response unit were getting ready to come and meet us.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. That would have been...
Yeah. I did another couple of years of it, and I've got some stories from those I'll share in other episodes. But the one that this reminded me of is the fact that a few years later, Dad had gone on the trip, and he was coming home. He was on, I think, the M4 or the M5 late at night, and a guy in a Saab fell asleep at the wheel and drifted over and basically T-boned Dad.
Oh, dear.
And the last thing on earth you want to get hit by is a Saab. The last thing you want to be in is a Reliant Robin. Fortunately, it was wet, so Dad's car got tipped onto its side and basically scraped its way down the road. They found their luggage over an area that spread out over a quarter of a mile.
Oh, wow.
The impact was so bad that not only did it wake up Dad's passenger, but it also snapped the seat in half, effectively. When the car eventually came to... Dad smartly realised that after the impact, it sort of went onto its side, righted itself, and then decided that maybe something had gone on with the brakes, so just let it coast to a stop. When the police arrived, they ascertained that everybody was okay, and as it happened, an off-duty police officer had actually witnessed the whole thing. So it's fairly open and shut with the insurance. But once it had all been decided that everybody was okay, they all had a bit of a laugh because the car had been done up like Thunderbird 4. And for the last hour or two, apparently, all the police chatter had been coppers phoning each other going, you are never going to see what I've just seen going past the other way. So I've got this photo somewhere of this beleaguered thing smashed to pieces that looks like Thunderbird 4. There was yellow polystyrene everywhere.
Yeah, I was just about to say, if anyone doesn't remember, Thunderbird 4 was the tiny little yellow one.
The submarine, yeah.
Yeah, that used to come out of the Thunderbird 2.
Yeah,
green
it dropped out the top, didn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, I've still got my Tracy Island.
Did anybody get any injuries from that then?
Nope, they were all fine.
Wow,
amazing.
that is so
That,
mad.
that's properly miraculous stuff. So that's Thunderbird 4.
You know, something I forgot to mention when we're going back to the computer games topic was, did you know that I was a finalist in the Nissan Race Academy? Not the GT Academy. I only got to the top 1,000 in the UK, not the top 100, which is what you had to do to get through in GT Academy. But they had a sister series called the Nissan Race Academy. And in order to enter, you had to do one simple thing. You had to pay a whole load of money to enter this competition, but they gave you a free car. Or maybe you were buying the car and then you had to go into the competition. But yeah, any GTR, anyone who bought a GTR or a 370Z in 2008 and 2009 got entered into this competition. And I think there was like 300 people in the end that were involved. And I got to go out for passenger laps on that with Lucas Ordonez, who was the guy who'd won the GT Academy, which was done on the PlayStation in partnership with Sony in the previous 2 years. He was a very good driver.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I was only in the finals. Only. I think I made it to the top 15 out of 300 or something like that. And then...
That's pretty good.
Yeah, but then I got kicked out because I wasn't good enough.
That's fair enough. So I've currently got no track experience at the moment, which is sad. I
We'll
want
fix
to go.
that.
I want to go on a track one day in something.
Well, come for my birthday.
Okay, we'll do it.
We host every year. Oh, it's I say
Every year.
It's now become a tradition. I did it last year, and now it's going to become
now
a
it's a
tradition.
tradition.
I don't like track days anymore for a whole bunch of different reasons, but mostly the unpredictability of who is there. And so I now, as a treat to myself, I hire Blyton Park, and we worked out that actually, if all of you club together, it costs the same as doing a normal track day, except it's the best track day you'll ever have because everybody is friendly and lovely and wonderful. And we had everything turn up from an MX-5 to a 488 pista, and everybody is sharing passenger laps and going out with each other and just having the best time. And anybody out there that's got a group of friends who loves their cars, I cannot recommend it enough. Like, if you can get like 20 of you together, it costs less than 200 quid a head. You can hire a track. It doesn't have to be Blyton. Others are available, but I like Blyton, and it's reasonably priced, and the people there are lovely. And it's just the nicest, most amazing thing to do, and a great way to learn your car and just have a good time. It was just brilliant.
And there was not one single red flag for the whole day. Actually, there was one.
Someone knocked a cone over.
Someone knocked a cone over, and then they shut the track down, got the cone off the track, and then it was back open again.
Yeah.
But no incidents.
Nobody span. Nobody had a problem.
No cars crashing into other cars. Nothing. It was
Just
great.
you wait until you see all raging 70 horsepowers of that Maestro going around there. That little
Mate, do it.
1275.
Give it to my son, and then let's see.
Oh no! Oh,
How fast it could go.
Yeah, okay. Bring some spare brakes.
I probably need to bring a spare engine as well, I guess. It is starting to do a little bit of a knock on startup occasionally, so I am wondering how much of that is going to need a rebuild after 30 plus years. So we'll see.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Fun fact, one of his friends who came, he brought Aerial Atom?
Yeah, Aerial Atom 4, the turbo one.
Yeah, very, very quick with the big wings, the aero package and everything. And he'd been sort of smashing it around all day. And for whatever reason, some conversations happened, and he asked my son to give him a few tips. My son was a racing driver, ex-drift instructor and various other things, and now an engineer for a very large OEM. Anyway, went around, gave him a few pointers, and then he was like, well, look, okay, why don't you show me? So they swapped seats, and the guy came back in, the look on his face, he was just like, I didn't know the car could do that. It was one of the funniest things to see. And they was like, yeah, but I was only taking it easy because it's not my car. I don't want to take it. He said, it can go faster than that. He went,
Wow.
yeah, it can go faster than that.
The only time I have been on track, not as a driver, but as a passenger, was a French car show 2011, I think it was. I can't remember exactly where it was. It was some time ago now. But I was in a Clio Cup. I think it was that one that was literally had the number plate CL10 Cup. As well, which I think was around the press. And I remember that thinking in that, I cannot believe the G-forces I am feeling in that little hatchback. That still blows my mind, because even when I drive, and I do drive spiritedly sometimes, I've never felt anything like that.
Oh, when you go out with I've done a passenger lap around Brands Hatch in a Ginetta. When you go out in a proper slicks and wings car with a race driver, you won't believe that a car was capable of doing that. It's
Slicks is the biggest difference. Like just straight off the bat, you can throw slicks on a road car, and the amount of grip you suddenly have, the how once you get the tires warmed up, how late you can brake, how much mid corner speed you can carry. It's just a different thing. And in the hands of someone who actually knows what they're doing, which in my case I don't. Trust me, it's an experience and a half.
I was going to say, what I do know about things like that is that apparently tyres are one of the biggest differences you can make on a car to its handling.
Oh,
Just
100%.
yeah, it's the bit that connects it to the road. So but we had. Don't think I'm too much of a tangent on this, but one of the chaps who came along also has another YouTube channel, and he brought his partner with him, and she was very, very nervous. She didn't even want to go out with him in his MX-5.
Oh, the one I took round in the R8.
And so Ant managed to somehow convince her that she would have a nice, friendly little jaunt out in the R8. And then she actually got on with it. She really liked it. You did a really good job. You made her feel at ease.
I built it up slowly.
And then she went out in something else. And then towards the end of the day, I saw her going out in the Atom. And I thought, the Atom is I drove the Atom. It's quite intense. You know, it's 400 odd horsepower, and it weighs nothing, right? And she went out, and I was sat there thinking, when she comes back in, she's probably either going to be passed out, or just with a smile so big, she'll need a plastic surgeon to get it off. And she was laughing like a madman. She had the best time. And that's why I do it. Because again, I think half the time, finding an enjoyment in these things is just putting somebody in the right environment where they can feel at ease. And we'll get you on it. We'll do it.
Sounds like a plan.
Anyway, movies.
Oh, let's have a think. Well, it's got to be Fast and Furious.
Oh, absolutely.
Number 1, 2, and 3. After that, I don't know what that was, but it's something.
Oh, I've got a soft spot for 5.
Oh, actually 5. No. 5's, 5 I think was a bit okay, but then after that, it gets crazy.
It's always going to be the original for me. It's always going to be. I mean, in so many ways, it's just so wrong. Like, so much stuff is wrong. There's so much danger to the manifold when that floorboard falls off. But it was, yet again, I didn't know any better when that film came out. And I watched that and rewatched that. And that was a piece of media for me, because I'm 33, turning 34 this year. And, it was just everything. It was just absolutely everything.
And of course, as soon as you'd finished watching The Fast and the Furious, you went to go and play Need for Speed Underground.
Absolutely.
Had to be done.
That's one of the reasons that I think I'm still such a little stance boy. And I'm still, that part of my brain hasn't quite left yet, that I still like all the lowered, silly cars.
Underground was such a good game.
It was. It started off with Little John and the East Side Boys as you were entering in, and the next one was Snoop Dogg's Riders on the Storm and Underground 2 as well. Yeah. Just great, awesome soundtracks.
So you know the first Fast and Furious movie, the orange Supra, belonged to a guy called Craig Lieberman, who helped put together a lot of the cars, and the GTR, the silver GTR with the blue stripes, that was also his personal car. That was in
Too Fast, Too Furious.
Too Furious. We got to meet up with him recently at a car show, and we'll leave a link to my vlog of that in the description. And I asked him, what was your favourite of the films altogether? And he'd quite like 5 as well.
Yeah.
But out of the first 3 proper Fast and Furious movies, which one do you think he chose?
3.
Tokyo Drift?
100%. Me too.
Yeah.
And that was my choice. That's my son's choice. Even though it's not the original crew, it's just literally got a cameo that was...
Oh, it's basically a spin-off, isn't it?
It was a spin-off, entirely a spin-off. But in terms of the actual cars and the driving, it was number 3.
Right, you know what? Okay, if I was going to take a car from Tokyo Drift, do you know the one I'd have?
Which one's that?
I'd have the Hulk.
Yeah, the Hulk. Yeah.
Do you know what? I think I'd choose that too. Actually, that just looks so funny to drive.
Just something about it. I'm like,
I have a soft spot for it.
How can you choose that over an RX-7? I mean, come on.
Oh, those are the obvious choices. The RX-7s, fantastic cars when
But
they
with
work
the-
and they're not overheating.
Oh, the Veil
Fantastic
side.
cars.
With the Veilside Fortune body kit that I obsessed over for at least a decade.
that's what stopped you buying an RX-7, isn't it? Is because you could only buy an RX-7 with the kit. Can you even buy the kit anymore? Like,
You can buy reps of the kit for sure. I think Veilside might actually be able to do one for you, but they're not
not
they're
cheap.
not cheap. No, I think
No.
when I first started looking at it, when the film had just come out, I think the kit on its own was about somewhere between £15,000 and £20,000. Then obviously you've got the bodywork and then paint.
Doesn't it make the car like a foot wider or something daft? Like
It is. I can't remember how much wider it makes it. It makes it a bit wider, a bit longer. Yeah, it was just amazing. I did see one last year for sale, and I was contemplating it as part of the Antonex car series. Obviously, I couldn't get my hands on one.
I love the RX-7.
But I saw it. I saw one that was going for about 85,000, and I was like, I was so tempted.
That is the thing, is that all the kind of like the cars, like the hero cars from those movies and a lot of that time have gone up so much in value. It's like the scene at the end of the first Fast and Furious with the 355, and what was it, the Supra, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was the Supra. Now that what's the retail one of those? More than you can afford, pal. Be completely switched around, wasn't it?
100%. You know, that was one of the producers on the show. I can't remember what the other car. Oh, they were going to do a Corvette, and it was Craig Lieberman again. He said that no, you can't do that. It's got to be something. It's got to be an exotic of some description. And one of the producers happened to have this 355 that he just bought, and that is the producer, the owner of that actual car in that race that he got in that particular scene.
It was a black one, I think, wasn't it?
It was black,
I
yeah.
like the 355. Like, there's something about it. I know it's not like the obvious red Ferrari colour, but there's something.
No, 355s don't look great in red.
Yeah, I agree with you. I always used to want one
I disagree.
when I was young, because I'm not a huge Ferrari person. I've become more of a Ferrari person from watching your channel, just being friends with you. I've appreciated them more. So you've rubbed off on me like that.
What about the challenge? That was red. It was a special red, but it was
And
red.
also, how shameful of us. How can we look ourselves in the eyes? We didn't mention Ferrari F355 challenge in the video games section.
We didn't, did
True.
we?
Yep.
One of the world's
course.
most difficult blooming racing games.
No, the best video game you've got on all that is the Ford Explorer Racing. Do you remember that?
Nope.
They did a thing when the Ford Explorer came out. I can't remember what it was on, but it was just you just drove around in a bunch of Ford Explorers. I don't think it was very good. I'm pretty sure it was just marketing, but I remember having that and thinking, this is kind of weird. I don't want this car. And then I never played it again.
When I was a kid, Motocross Madness. Love that.
Okay. We also can't let this episode go by without mentioning Outrun.
Yes.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No.
Do we even need to say anymore?
No, we don't. So yeah, back to the world of movies. Yeah, Fast and Furious. I mean, look, even if people hate it, you cannot deny it's changed car culture
100%.
for sure.
I yearned for a Mitsubishi Eclipse, that green Mitsubishi Eclipse. I yearned. It was a burning in my soul. Every time I played Forza 2, I had to remake it in there and things like that to play online.
Okay, so this is really sad, right? I've been very lucky to drive an awful lot of cars, including stuff that I consider proper dream, surely that's never going to happen type stuff. But do you know what? I'm really still so desperate for somebody to offer me
What's that?
a Mitsubishi FTO.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Do you remember those?
Yep.
Little baby brother to the GTO,
Yep.
front wheel drive. I think the hot engine was a 2-litre V6. It was in the same mould as like the late Celica and stuff like that, where it was like it was basically pretending to be far more sporty than it actually was.
Sit very high.
Yeah. But again, there was a popular car for people that had watched the Fast and Furious to go and buy because you could make it sound quite good,
Yeah.
but it wasn't really ever going to be incredible, and they were quite cheap. But apparently, even by the standards of Japanese cars, they rusted like nobody's business.
I swear, was it Top Dead Center recently that did the FTO? They bought an X Max Power FTO or something. I don't know if you guys have seen
Possibly.
that.
No, I haven't seen that.
But they didn't. And I think that was quite rusty as well. It also came with a lot of very questionable DVDs where the car had been used as a shoot for a very questionable movie. So they gave loads of DVDs away.
Oh dear. I do know of I know this is going to be a family-friendly podcast,
Yes.
but I do happen to know of a local heritage railway that got in serious trouble because it loaned itself for use as a studio by an adult film company. And somehow the board who let it go, they knew what was happening. They knew what they were. It wasn't like we were hoodwinked. We didn't know. But that just tickled me.
You weren't the only one who was tickled.
That's clearly.
It seems not.
But yeah, see, in recent times, I think movie cars haven't been quite as exciting as they once were. So
What about Wraith? Was it Wraith?
what, the Wraith?
The Wraith, that was it.
What was
that?
That was a wasn't it a Dodge? I think. Don't quote me on this. Like special. Didn't they use it as an Indianapolis pace car or something?
Yeah,
you think with
something like
Charlie
that.
Sheen in it. It was like a super low drag,
Yeah.
kind of like prototype car, but they did actually make one. I had a bit of a moment recently. You'll know about this already. I went to the Peterson Automotive Museum in the United States, where they had just an incredible collection. It's just, if you find yourself in Los Angeles and you like cars, you have to go. And they had everything from, again, how do we miss this? The Mystery Machine, right? But obviously a real life version. They had a Ford GT90.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the concept car from like the mid-1990s, sort of like supposedly related to the GT40, though not really. And I think it was really a way of them launching their new edge styling.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to have, it was basically built off, I think, an XJ220 chassis, but with quad turbo V12 engine that never actually worked. You know, they quoted some silly numbers like 700 horsepower, this and the other. I doubt it ever did it. And I think they only made one or maybe two or three of them, maybe at most. It was one of these cars I knew about from Gran Turismo, but I didn't think I would actually ever get to see.
Yeah.
Actually, do you know what's just popped into my head? I don't know exactly why. I don't know how this happened. Taxi. The French film.
Oh, yeah,
Taxi.
yeah. Not the Queen Latifah version.
Not the Queen Latifah version.
Let's not talk about that.
Is it about 1998, written by Luc Besson? And is it a Peugeot 405, I think?
Possibly.
And yeah, that's pretty iconic. I think that's a forgotten movie car. There's a really bizarre film called Rising Sun with Sean Connery in it, I'm sure. And it's basically about an investigation into a murder type thing. And the bad guy drives, I think, a Vector. Yeah, he's got a Vector W8, which is a really bizarre thing to see in a film.
Yeah, was that like a supercar-y style thing in like the form of like a almost like Lamborghini?
Yeah, their thing was it was supposed to be inspired by fighter planes and things. So it had a cockpit that was kind of like an F-14 or something. Like it was like a digital display that at the time was like, quite trick and everything. But you look at it now and you're like, this is like,
was it full of all touchscreen CRTs and stuff like that? Was
Something like that.
Something like that. Wasn't
yeah,
it?
it looks like a blooming bank machine from like 25 years ago.
Yes.
Inside you're like, it's just
But it was future high tech.
Yeah, it's hilariously outdated now, but yeah.
We're forgetting, I think, one of the most important movie cars, and you're probably all going to tell me to get out, but considering we're in a music studio, the Bluesmobile.
No, you're right. With the speaker on top of it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
No, you lost me. Never watched it.
Oh man, you got to do it.
You gotta do it.
The
I
Blues
think they
Brothers is an
said-
iconic film.
One of the reasons that is theorised that the car is meant to have all these special powers and be able to keep going is because of whatever happened when it was stored overnight in the in the garage next to like
Yes.
the electric.
In the extended
area.
edition,
Yes.
they have that. Wayne's World, the Mirthmobile.
Yep, exactly. Absolutely.
Like-
What was an AMC Pacer? Was that?
Yeah. Was it a Pacer or a Gremlin? I can never remember.
Something like that. I think it was a Pacer.
I think you're right. Isn't that the car that's like the full width car that's quite short?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. It's not the Pinto because the Pinto's the one with the exploding fuel tank.
Yeah.
And I remember in GTA 4 they actually have basically a version of the Wayne's World car called the Rhapsody. And if you zoom in and look on the dashboard, there's a picture of Garth and Wayne on it.
Brilliant.
So
brilliant.
a great
love that.
homage there.
I love that. I mean, also, this has been across nearly all medias now, but Transformers.
Oh yeah,
Like
true
you
that.
know, you got the iconic Optimus Prime truck. You got Bumblebee as both, a Beetle and a Camaro later. They had those in the Peterson as well. I quite
That's
the old
brilliant.
ratty looking Camaro is I think pretty cool.
I've got to go there.
Yeah, you got to do it, man. You got to do it.
You know, we've talked about trains,
Yeah,
automobiles. Have we talked about bikes and planes? Have we done helicopters?
not so much. You're going to tell me you've got a thing for David Essex's Silver Dream Racer?
Nope. I just remembered a TV show called Street Hawk, which
Yes.
is a motorbike.
Yep.
And it was like it
was Knight Rider,
Knight
but-
Rider
yeah.
with a motorbike.
Yeah.
That was. I actually watched a couple of episodes of that last year. It was really bad.
Yeah, no, it's awful.
It's really bad. I didn't realize how bad it was until I watched it again, and it was really, really.
Isn't it
bad.
like the motorbike does 300 mile an hour or something daft, and you're like,
Yeah.
no, it doesn't though, does
Yeah,
it?
no, it
it doesn't
doesn't,
though.
no.
it does about 50, and then you speed it up. Like, no.
And there was a film that came to my mind, Firefox, with Clint Eastwood.
Oh yeah, you think Russian.
Yes. You must
know, that's-
think in Russian, Mr. Gant.
I didn't know that was a film. I thought it was a web browser.
Yeah, tis now.
No, Firefox was a film about a guy who had to go and steal a experimental plane from Russia. It's very good, actually.
Yeah, it's quite dark actually as well. It's really, really dark. It's not much of an action movie. I can see why it failed miserably, but
a great
it
film.
is a good film.
Well, bikes and trucks. It's got to be that scene in the Terminator 2, hasn't it? With the truck that crashes over the bridge and it's chasing them on the
Yeah,
motorbike.
and the Harley.
Yeah, and is it Guns N' Roses, You Should Be Mine, or something like that playing in the background? Is it something like that?
No, it is, and that actually was like a big. Again, these are the things we sort of forget because obviously time changes stuff. But that track being in that was
That was cool.
yeah. I think one of the things I love about media and when you get into cars is that there are cars out there for whom you don't need to be into cars at all to love them. And I think maybe one of the best examples of that has to be the Ford Anglia 105e.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, because without Harry Potter, a Ford Anglia 105e would still be worth, £2.50.
Exactly.
But because of the Harry Potter thing,
Yeah.
people want them.
Could you think the film producers thought, oh, I've got a couple of those sitting in a garage somewhere. Maybe if we include that in a movie, we can sell them for a profit?
Oh, yeah. I tell you what, is allegedly going to become quite valuable over the next few years, although I'm not entirely sure. The TVR Tuscan.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Swordfish.
Yeah. Love those.
Yeah. Great movie. I mean, actually, I haven't watched it in 20 years, so it might be a terrible movie.
It's got Halle Berry in it.
Yeah, it's got a lot of Halle Berry in it.
Yeah, I love her.
But yeah, it's like a sort of peak 2000s like mystery thriller. Is it Hugh Jackman in it?
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh
Yeah.
Jackman. And yeah, it's pretty epic. There's a couple of iconic scenes in it. One I'm not going to describe, but the other's got a TVR Tuscan in it in the reflex silver.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact name. It's Spectraflare silver, I think it is.
Yeah.
Also, Tuscans are just cool.
They are.
Like, there's just something about them like that is epic.
But I don't think there were any in America at that time, were there?
They were never legal.
Yeah, never legal in
I'm
America.
not sure any TVR was ever sold new in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, there was probably a time when you could get them over there, but it would have been a bit awkward. I'm trying to think of a Bullet.
Oh, okay.
Because I was trying to think
That's a
of
classic.
an iconic Mustang, but you're like, yeah, no, Bullet.
But
That's it,
that's
isn't
the
it?
one. Can't think of any others.
And there must be a whole bunch of them.
I have a feeling that we might have to do another episode on this because I'm feeling like
Are we going to have to go off and do some more research?
I think we're going to have to do
Absolutely.
that. Go off and come
We have
back.
done the world a great disservice.
Do you know what I'd also like to talk about at some point? Cars that people who just generally aren't car people like as well. You know,
That's 99% of all cars sold today.
Well,
Yeah,
yes,
pretty much.
that is. But like the ones that actually you see people getting excited about. My wife, she doesn't like cars at all. They are a means of transport for her, but she adores the Nissan Figaro. It's the only car she ever speaks about. I have to get one at some point, just for her to make her happy. So, you know.
The Figaro is a bizarre car. I have driven one because it's basically a K car, only it's not a K car because the engine's too big. So I think everything about it, and they've got a massive cult following, like huge even today. There was a garage, I presume it's still there, in East London that just does Figaros. They do look a little bit like Lady Penelope's Fab put in far too hot a wash, don't they? Like
yes, they
that's
do.
the vibe of a Figaro.
Are they not much to drive either? I don't believe. Are they just?
It's a K10 Micro underneath.
Oh, is it with a Slushmatic?
CVT, I think.
CVT.
Oh, no, it might be Slushmatic. It might be Slushy-matic.
I'd love to take one of those and give it the sort of like American hot rod treatment, but in this like really tiny compact form. Hayabusa engine.
Much like that Austin A30 that turned up to me the other day with a 5-litre small block engine in it.
Yeah.
And like 400 horsepower, tiny little pizza cutter wheels on the front.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy said...
Drag radials on the back.
Yeah, the guy said he drives that 4,000 miles a year.
He does, yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I sat in that thing, and there's a photo of me, which maybe we'll get you to include, me sat in that car, and my knees are by my face.
You're quite compact, yeah.
Exactly. And my ankles are like this, almost... I don't know how the guy does it. Credit to him. He had the biggest man parts out of everybody there, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, for sure. Actually, I tell you what, speaking of men, Bad Boys.
Oh,
yeah.
Hello.
Bad Boys 1 and 2.
What you going to do?
Yeah. I mean, actually, you know what? And I say this owning a 550, which is featured in half of the second film. It changes between a 550 and a 575 depending on the shot. But I maintain it's a 550 because in the hero shots where it pulls up to the camera, it's a 550. I think it was Michael Bay's 550. But I think the Porsche in the first one is cooler.
Yeah, I agree.
What was the car in the first? Because it's been such a long time.
964 turbo, turbo 3.6. I think it's today they're worth quite a lot of money. Probably again partly because of Bad Boys.
Yeah.
But they're just awesome.
From that film, I just remember the scene where they're berating the girl's date at the door, and there's Will Smith and the other guy going.
Second film.
Was that the
Reggie.
second film? Was it
Reggie? Yeah,
that was it. That was
man, you're at least 30. yeah, Reggie. That is a brilliant.
I'm gonna have
scene.
to rewatch that at some point.
Yeah, so that's Bad Boys 2. But in the first one, at the end, they have the chase between the 964 and the bad guy Fouché or whatever he's called is in Cobra. He's in probably a Cobra replica, but like, yeah, it's.
We're forgetting another movie car, the Jag from Shaun of the Dead.
Actually, we have also missed out an entire movie series.
Bond films.
Oh gosh, yes.
I still to this day love it. Was the GoldenEye the remote controlled 750?
Tomorrow Never Dies.
Tomorrow Never Dies. That's the one.
Yeah.
That was such a film as well. Oh, I loved that scene. It was great. Just sitting on the back on his, was it a Sony Ericsson flip up PDA or something like that? Controlling this. Suddenly it's a full colour screen and he's being able to do all these manoeuvres.
But that's what I was. Do you remember it? Like back in like 1997, that film came out. Because there's a BMW motorbike in it as well. You know, that sort of stuff. You looked at it and you're like, oh, this is just some silly nonsense science fiction stuff. You're like, you can do that now.
Yeah.
Like you could do that. People have done that. Like that's kind of incredible. Like the amount of stuff that you look at. I mean, in the first Beverly Hills Cop, there is a scene in which they have a system in the LA police department where they can track where the cars are in the city. And that was science fiction. Yeah, like basically they're like, it's GPS and sat nav, right? You're like, but in 1984, like that was.
I've got GPS trackers in all my cars now.
Yeah.
When you started mentioning, Beverly Hills Cop scene, all I was thinking of was the banana in the tailpipe. That's all I could think of.
I like Beverly Hills Cop 2, the opening with the Ferrari, that also, like Bad Boys 2, changes between a 308 and a 328 depending on the shot. Is an epic opening. I love that film.
I just remember from the Bond films, the one which always made me sad. Was it the Z8 that got sawed in half?
Z8, yeah.
Z8. It did it
In the
even
world, it's not
move
enough.
in the film? Did it even go anywhere? Was it literally in there for
a little bit. Doesn't it have rockets in it?
I don't know.
Actually, you know what? It's a terrible, terrible Bond film, but the cars in Die Another Day are pretty spectacular.
Was that the Jag and the Aston that are on the ice and then they're firing things?
Yeah.
I had a toy of the Jag, which had the deployable rockets and things as a kid.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was so cool. I loved that.
There is one film, as you did mention a Porsche moment ago, that you insisted that we bring up, and I'm thinking we probably need to bring today's episode to a close. But I want to make sure that we don't leave that one.
No, we couldn't.
Unchecked.
Cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah, and I'm going to say what it is. I'm not that embarrassed anymore. I'm over it now. There's a film called Condor Man with what was his name?
Michael
Crawford.
Yeah.
For anyone who's British and grew up on British TV sitcoms, will remember him as
Frank Spencer.
Frank Spencer. That was it. And but he did this film called Condor Man, and in that film, I actually can't remember the name of the car that he drove, but that was the first time I really saw Porsches as something I really wanted. And I forget which edition they were. They were G Series.
There's a flat nose, isn't it? I think it's the leader of the pack, which is Oliver Reed.
Yeah.
As a Russian.
Yeah.
Driving around.
And they're all black, and they've got the turbo body kits with the huge whale tail wings and blacked out tinted windows. And when I saw that film, I was like, that's it. One day I want to have a Porsche. I did get over that in the end.
And even a kit car. There's actually a real thing. I can't remember what it's based on, but it does exist. You can buy one.
Yeah. There was one for sale in Scotland recently.
And shockingly, unlike the Nissan Skyline R34 and the Ford Anglia 105e, being featured in Condor Man, in spite of the incredible rarity of these things, hasn't put prices through the roof.
I think that's probably because most people didn't watch Condor Man because it was an absolute flop. But as a kid, I fell in love with it because of those Porsches.
I'd never heard of Condor Man until now, so there we go.
It's a film that almost makes me want to be a film student again, because it's such a dumpster fire of a film that has absolutely no idea what it wants to, like, from scene to scene it changes from silly child-friendly like comedy to kind of trying to be quite serious sort of movie, back to like farcical again. They forgot to put a plot in it. Like the whole thing is, I watched it because I teased Anthony mercilessly about it for a long time, and after I saw it I just thought, I actually don't know any more about the film than before I'd seen it. It's fascinating.
That's 'cause I told you everything you need to know.
Is it one of those films where you could stand up at the front of the class as a teacher and go, this is how not to do everything?
Except for the cars.
Yes.
Except for the bad guys' cars. Those Porsches, and the flat nose as the lead car, they literally drove like a squadron of cars chasing down the hero, and they were just the coolest Porsches I'd ever seen. And I can't think of another 911 that I've seen since that really, for me, captured the
One day
spirit
I'm going to
of those
borrow
cars.
a black 911 from Porsche's press fleet, and we're going to go to Switzerland and see if we can find
That road.
because I've got a rough idea of where it is, but because it's not a film like The Italian Job where everybody knows every inch of tarmac that they use, because let's be honest here, nobody cares. We could be pioneers like Top Gear in search of the source of the Nile. We can find the roads used for Condor Man.
Well, you know what I think we need to do? I think we need to turn this over to the audience now, because we've got the email address and description and comments on the YouTube page.
Yep.
What films and what cars do you think that we've missed and we've forgotten we need to talk about? What cars should we talk about? What is your favourite film car, perhaps? What do we need to say, yes, this is the best film car in your opinion?
And in a future episode, we will go through your answers and realise what a shockingly poor job we've done of our own topic.
I was going to say, did we do any research for this one?
No,
Absolutely none. It was
no.
off the cuff. But
Absolutely.
That's the best
fun.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, on that bombshell, thank you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe via whichever medium you've been listening to us today. And remember, Will the Plank on YouTube, JayEmm on Cars, and JayEmm and Friends, and Sports and Touring. Check them out. Links will be in the relative descriptions, and hopefully you'll join us next time for our next conversation on the Radiator Arms.
Bye.